Hello, hello. Today we are going to be looking at a 1909 Argentine Mauser. And 1909 is the model. The serial number on this one. The F is in Foxtrot with 4 numbers. That means this was made in 1910 and it was produced at the DWM factory, one of the originals. The stock on this has been sanded down terribly. They tried to get rid of some gouges or something. They did a pretty good job of that, but it's got uneven. This bolt's sticking out here. It doesn't overlap as much as it should. So I've taken off the original finish. The serial number is still barely visible. There's a gap between the handguard. I don't know if you can see that. Good 1/16 of an inch at least. And that basically ruined the value, the collectability of this. It's not the original finish. It is the original stock, all numbers matching. It's got a coat of rust on it. So I'm going to try to do a video of the teardown, and subsequently I'm going to alter it, and hopefully it'll turn out pretty good. So let's see where it goes. Alright, let's continue with a general overview of what we're hoping to accomplish here. We're going to take a lot of the surface rust off. I took some still photos. Hopefully those come out well. And there's some surface rust. I'm going to be using this Autosol metal polish, which I have had real good results with. And I was told it wouldn't do any damage. This is supposedly one of the better ones to use. I found it worked really well, but it took a little bit of elbow grease. You had to rub it in a few times, and it really polished everything. I hope it doesn't take off any, I don't know what they're going to call this, maybe pickling. There's it's not nickel plated, but there's something with this whiting on this steel here, and this is a special tungsten, Bowler tungsten steel that they used originally from the factory. So hopefully we're not going to have any residual patina or issues in the future with that surface. In my experience so far, it's been a really good polish for that. Also, because this is an antique, I consider it an antique gun. It's over 100 years old. I'm going to be using this Renaissance microcrystalline wax polish, developed in the 50s. You can Google this. It's what museums use to protect against like finger oils and some other surface stuff. Now again, this is going to be a modified gun. I'm not trying to preserve it because it's already been ruined. I'm hoping just to do my thing with it, but preserve the metal as much as I can for generations going forward. So hopefully it's going to be a unique piece. But those are the two main products. My big concern right now, I just got this gun, so I'm going to have a look at the bore. I'm going to try and get an endoscope in there. I'm going to try and really have a look at it, make sure it's good. Most of these 1909 long guns, not the carbines, most of the long guns do not have pitting and other such problems. But I'm going to pretty much, just go to town on the bore with the Hopies and some brass brushes and see what I get out of this. Let's see how clean it gets, and hopefully I'll have some good pictures to show you afterwards. Then I'm going to do a complete teardown, and I want to get almost everything that is removable. In fact, the way they sanded this, and the fact that this stress lug here is sticking up, I don't like that. It's got almost 1/8 of an inch overlap there, and then it digs down in. I don't know if that angle's right. It just does not look right to me. Okay, fast forward here just a minute. That recoil lug, turns out it was inserted upside down. I bought this spanner tool with these notches in recessed area here that fits on these. It'll fit on the Moser Nagants, and you can remove the recoil lug with this. Turns out it was upside down, and when they had reinserted it after sanding down the stock, they had flipped it over, so there is an angle on it down that way. So once I flipped it over, it came out flush, kind of flush with the wood. It's still sticking up a little bit because of the amount of sanding that was done on this originally. Probably going to remove the sight ladder. There's going to be, if this all works out, top of the handguard's coming down, the wood's going to be cut back about here, the barrel's going to be cut down to 16.5 inches. It's got an 11-inch twist rate, 11.02 or something. So at 16.5 inches we should get 1.5, a little over 1.5 twists to the end. I'm going to thread the barrel. I'm hopefully going to put a suppressor on there, which is on order, and we'll see how that goes. This is technically a 31 caliber if it chambers properly. I have some headspace gauges coming in the mail. I'm going to check the headspace, make sure this is chambered for 765. There was a tag on the trigger guard that I cut off that said it was chambered in 765. I don't see any other stamps or any other markings that say it's not. It does not look like it's been rechambered, but I definitely got to check the headspace. And then we're going to remove this upper piece of wood. I told you I'm going to cut this back. This will be gone. There'll be a scope. This is a long eye relief scope. It's got over 9, it's like 9.75, 9 3/4 inch eye relief. It's a special vortex long eye relief. Hopefully it's going to be a good scope for this, for what it's going to end up being. Basically a good deer rifle. Hopefully it'll get out to 200 yards successfully. In all my calculations so far, I should be able to hunt black bear and some other big game with this. It should really do the job well. So last but not least, this stock is getting a coat of some linseed oil. It's got a real good grain on it so far. It's gonna, I think that stock's going to be beautiful when it's shined up, if I don't have to lose any of it in the process. I don't think I'm going to have to shave this down. I'm not putting a bent bolt on it, so I'm not going to notch it. If I did put a bent bolt on it, the original bent bolts from the factory here actually come out and down, so they don't even have a notch in the wood. So I don't think the wood's, from here back, I don't think any of that wood's getting modified basically from what it is, other than a nice light cleaning, and then a thick coat. I want to make this sucker glossy, so we'll see how it goes. Let me get started. My initial look at the bore was kind of iffy. I don't know what I was seeing here. I did a lot of work on it, and it came out really nice. Example of a typical one-way cleaning, which I think a lot of people recommend. I've got a rod without a handle on the end. Push that in, and then I've got an open end here. It's not going to attach to it, but I can guide it through the rest of the way, and it will come out the other end, and you get somewhat of a good clean. Now this is after I scrubbed it. So that's an example of a one-way direction for the cleaning. And essentially you're just getting a wipe. You're not getting a scrub. And this brass will not hurt, especially on this gun made at the DWM factory, the original Bowler tungsten steel. You're not going to hurt this thing with the brass fitting. So when I first get these, when I buy these, I do the back and forth motion after the whole piece is sat, after I've run a few pads through it, maybe even some rim oil. Then I just plunge it. You might do that a dozen times. It's really going to scrub the caked off stuff. And you might have to do many passes. That is freaking dirty. I don't know if you can even see that, but I'll take some pictures. So that's nasty. I don't even want to run it through this other way, but we're gonna clean this sucker out. So then I do the front end, because I'm only gonna reach into about there with this rod that I have. So, oh yeah, jeez, that is freaking dirty. So here's an example of the pads kind of after good soaking and then a good scrubbing. And that bore is shiny. I really like how that came out. For as old as this gun is, condition it's in, that is nice. Okay, so the first part of this teardown is going to be removing the bayonet lug. Got to get this pin out before you can remove the lug. It's a little difficult. I had this punch with a rounded tip that kept sliding off the end of the pin, so I finally found a flat-headed punch and was able to get that pin out. And the next step is a little difficult too. The bayonet lug's kind of pressed on there. I'm going to try and take this lug off. This is drilled through. If you find one that was never drilled through and this lug was not added, this is a spare piece that was added after the fact, after these were made. So there are supposedly a couple that exist out there where this bayonet lug was not added, which means there would not be a hole drilled through, which means they're extremely rare, so those are collectible. But you got to take this excess, this adapter bayonet leg off to get this cuff off. This cuff is held on just by the one pressure pin right here. Push that down, it's supposed to slide off. This one's really tight. So let's try to remove the lug, and then we'll focus on that other piece. Now I don't want to damage this. The lug's not going to go back on this, but I don't want to damage it in case these parts are salvageable for some other build. I might just get a hammer and screwdriver and just do something like this. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to use this duct tape and do a little pry. Slowly work that out without getting any damage on there. This adapter is going to go in my pile of spare parts. It looks like somebody did something there. That's not normal. So that doesn't look like erosion or pitting. Yeah, somebody did some grinding or something. That's just that's not like the DWM factory to leave that in that way. That should have been a very nice flat surface, but I don't know what happened there. So that is a little different. So here I'm trying to get this front cuff off that holds the handguard to the barrel. I had a crescent wrench holding the pressure pin down. I was tapping on it with a screwdriver, and I put this dent in the wood. So that's what you shouldn't do. You got to be careful, and that's one of the hardest pieces to get off of this gun. And then with this cuff loose, finally, you can bring it all the way forward. It won't get caught on that lug. So now we will remove the upper band that holds the sling and the two handguards together. Some people will stick a screwdriver down in that groove there, which is a bad idea. The retention spring here should be enough. If you loosen that, it should slide off, but there is a screw on the band that can be loosened if you need to. Next, we're going to remove this screw, which is actually overlapping the upper handguard just a little bit from the wood, so we need to remove that screw before we remove the upper. At this point, you could remove the upper handguard. You have to lift the sight ladder up to make that happen, so you'd have to get it off that retention hook there, and then lift up the sight ladder, and then lift up the wood piece. And it's hard to lift it up. There's a little bit of play there with the barrel, so you could maybe get your fingers under there and lift it up, but that's not a real good idea. Some people will damage it by doing that. So we're going to remove the action first. We need to take out these two screws, and then I think it's going to fall apart. So we need to keep an eye on the barrel and receiver as we loosen up this lower magazine well. And again, there's two screws. They're different lengths. The back one's longer than the front one. Now that's loose, but not all the way out. So now what you see is we've got the play in the barrel. Where the barrel is loose, it can be lifted up like this, right? So that's going to allow us to remove this upper piece of wood, which is held in place by a spring. So we're going to take this up. Don't want to crack and break the wood here, and we don't want to stick anything in between. You don't want to stick screwdrivers in here and try to wedge it out. I'll see a lot of that damage on these type of guns where people try to tear them down. So you can lift up, work your way back towards the back, and you feel that spring just cut loose. I'll show you that spring here in a minute. You're going to have to rotate it while holding the sight ladder up. You don't want it to collapse on here and crack or break the wood. So it's a bit of a tricky operation there. Then you've got this built-in spring which just simply clips around the receiver or the barrel. That's actually part of the barrel right there. So that spring clips around it. and this piece comes off. It feels like a delicate piece. I've never cracked or broken one, but I've always tried to really be careful, especially around this area. And again, they sanded this down like crazy, so they've taken too much off the surface. So this piece is a lot thinner than most. I don't know if you can get in there and see that. That's typical. That's not a real typical thickness. It should be a little thicker, but okay, great. So now that we have that off, let's take a look at that locking mechanism under the sight ladder. See how that is got an extra hook, and this comes back. It can actually go like a 1/60 of an inch further back to prevent it from coming up. That way when you were carrying it, transporting, it wouldn't accidentally get flipped up or bent, broken. That was the purpose of retaining the edge. Okay, now let's take this action out. We've got this piece pretty loose over here. Let me get that last screw out, and I'm afraid it's going to fall apart when I do that. So let's put her upside down. And it just fell out. There we go, we've got the barrel and the receiver. And the action just fell out, which I didn't want to happen. Probably not a good way to portray that. So with that screw out, we've got the barrel is loose, and the receiver and action can come out. Let's get some still shots of the receiver and the barrel. Okay, so you've seen some of the surface rust that I should have showed you in a couple pictures there. Let's take this out of the stock for the first time and the reveal. We've got some rust colored buildup. There is some slight surfaced, but that just rubbed right off. Whew. So that might not even be rust. That might just be powdered something coming off the wood. Almost wood colored. We've got the serial numbers. You've got various serial numbers here stamped in the receiver, the barrel. They're going to be in the stock as well. This is getting a thorough cleaning. So I'm going to stop the filming right now and take a little time and do some cleanup work on this without any more tear down. Let's take a look at the wood before we do that. See what kind of condition the wood's in. Got a little bit of buildup in there. It looks like, it almost looks like grease and sawdust mixed together right there. I don't know what they've done with that. Okay, not sure if you remember the surface rust when I initially got this. There was a little bit here and there, but it was able to come off with that Autosol metal cleaner. Really nice. It looks like new. The crest turned out really well. The lettering, just really brilliant. And there's the crest. Very nice. The bluing on the barrel, everything. It just looks like new. Next, I decided to coat the stock. We were just coating the outside, not where the barrel goes, but I was using this True Oil Gunstock finish. The first 2 or 3 coats just soaked in like a sponge. It didn't even look like it had an effect. About the 3rd, 4th, 5th coat here is really getting glossy. I think that's the last coat I've put on it so far. I might wax it or maybe one more thin layer. Okay, in the next video we are going to get into the magazine well and the floor plate and the follower. I'm going to look at a comprehensive bolt teardown, installing the barrel and the receiver back into the stock, sight ladder removal and reinstallation, and then installing a scope mount and a scope. And then we're going to look at getting into some test firing and sighting it in, and hopefully in part 3, when I get my suppressor, we'll be shortening the stock and the barrel, threading the barrel, and then test firing at that point. we will talk to you then. Thank you.